Welcome to the Younger Members Committee Career Information Session number 5, when Maeve Delargy speaks with Julie Breen about essential self-care skills for young lawyers.
Everybody, and very welcome to this webinar. As you can see, it's going to be lively and fun. We're going to have a hair poll at the end to see who's done it best. I've gone for height, Julie's gone for luxury and colour. My name is Maeve Delargy. I am a member of the Younger Members Committee of the Law Society, and delighted to be able to host this event on behalf of the whole committee this evening. I am joined by Julie Breen, who coordinates the Law Society Professional Wellbeing Project. She holds a Bachelor of Law and will qualify as a systemic psychotherapist next month. Before joining the Law Society and studying psychotherapy, Julie lived and worked abroad in the humanitarian sector for 11 years, working in places like the Democratic Republic of Congo, Haiti, Malawi, and the Philippines. Julie is passionate about contributing to systemic change for professional well-being and supporting individuals find emotional and psychological health. There's a whole story in there that unfortunately we won't be able to get to today, so hopefully we get a chance to talk about Julie's previous life. But we are limited in time this evening, and there's so much that Julie has to say to us. So I think we'll crack on with the topic of tonight, which is self-care, and hopefully you'll learn some new things and maybe have your perspective shifted a little bit. We might start, I suppose, with Julie, with why is this something we should care about? Why is it important?
Thanks, Maeve. Really excited to be here, everybody. So I think that first question, Maeve, we were kind of talking about it before. I think it's important to understand the context behind this. Research tells us that mental well-being issues are disproportionately affecting younger solicitors. So we know this, and that research has been building incrementally. The Junior Lawyers Division in the UK would have carried out research every year, not every year, but periodically, into younger lawyer well-being. So for example, in 2019, they found that a quarter of the respondents reported experiencing severe or extreme levels of stress due to high workload and client expectations. Similarly, in the Law Society's research that was carried out in 2018, we found similar findings to that, and the stress levels were the highest in the first 5 years of practice. And then I suppose just the last piece, I think, just to give us context of why this is important and why we're talking about it, is the most recent piece of research that was done, and that was the IBA Mental Wellbeing report that was carried out. So the report was released this year, and the survey was done last year, and that was a survey done on institutions and individuals. And I think one of the stark kind of parts of that research that stood out to me was that 1 in 10 people under 30 had experienced suicidal thoughts related to their work. So I think it's important just to kind of put that in, give us a bit of context around our conversation, because it is really important to be talking about mental health and well-being for the younger solicitors.
Yeah, wow, that is that's shocking. It's sad that anyone would be in that position, but especially over something like work, but I can see well how it would happen. And I suppose it might be something we come to later on, but it seems like self-care is for all the time, and not just when you're in that crisis zone and you've suicidal thoughts. That's probably the most extreme, but it seems like this can benefit everyone at all stages.
Yeah, and what I would say is important, and I think what I'm really liking about our plan for tonight, I'm hoping it goes to plan, is that this idea of shifting our thought process around self-care and around well-being in the legal profession, because something's not working. And I think we can look at this from a systemic lens, and we can look at this from an individual lens. So the IBA Mental Wellbeing report and the Dignity Matters report that was just carried out by the Law Society of Ireland have really helped us think about systemic change. I suppose like the important thing is to remember that mental well-being at work is a complex issue, and to suggest that the fault lies primarily with individuals misses the point completely, that the whole system needs to be examined. So, often there will be firms that have activities and yoga and meditation, and that's really kind of like putting the onus on the individual. But those cosmetic activities, and this was pointed out in the IBA mental well-being report, those kind of cosmetic activities don't really achieve meaningful or long, they're not a meaningful or long-lasting solution. So, I think kind of the idea of well-meaning doesn't mean well-being, so firms, they really want to do something, they're doing all these different things, but actually that's not, we can see from the stress levels of younger lawyers that's not working. So that's really important, I think, to kind of recognize. And there is a call in that report for systemic change. So that means cultural and structural change. They have cited problems like non-existent managerial training. So that's a really important thing. In actual fact, there's a real disconnect between what firms think they're doing and what the respondents, individual respondents, believe their firms are doing. So, for example, 82% of firms say they were taking mental well-being really seriously, but only 6% actually provide training for senior management. Like there's a real disconnect there. And then just other stuff that they cited was like a lack of basic mental well-being support. So, for example, if you're working in an area like family law or child law or criminal law, there's a lack of trauma-informed workspaces and kind of knowledge for those types of workplaces. They also cited bullying, harassment, sexism, and racism as issues that need a systemic and cultural change. And then there's also, and we talked about this really briefly before, May, was that kind of, this idea of equating success with unsustainable hours, hitting billing targets, and also the idea of like higher pay equals success, because that's kind of this myth that we have going around, or higher success means, higher pay means happiness, which, isn't always the case. So there's a lot of things in there around reforming regulations, and that's also something that we saw at the AGM, actually, with Kieran Pendry. He talked about that kind of regulation change for bullying, harassment, and sexual harassment. So those kind of structural and cultural issues have to be led from the top down. We're all involved in it, but it's really important that we have role models where there's psychological safety, where we feel psychologically safe. We can make mistakes without recrimination. We can have those kind of conversations that are difficult with our bosses. That is all. I think the systemic barrier is a huge barrier to younger lawyers' well-being. Yeah,
I was only thinking about that myself today, that safety element, and how you just perform so much better when you feel like your opinions and going to people with potential solutions is going to be well received. It just gives you so much more freedom, and I think your performance really improves because of that, and just that thing of for junior lawyers waiting for everything to click and looking at your seniors and thinking, how do they do it all? But you just have to sit that period out where everything seems new, and then some things will eventually start clicking, and that's a really good feeling.
And trusting the process is really important.
And then I suppose that's up to your seniors as well to remember that what stage you're at, and that you need guidance, and then if they do that properly and get the training, I guess, to help them, then you will be able to do it by yourself.
And I was just thinking, Maeve, I suppose, when I was talking, because I realized that I was focusing really on the systemic lens there, and there is the individual lens as well, that's really important to talk about. So, there are people out there that kind of, this idea of self-care, it's kind of like this, like you look at Instagram and you see like, the perfect meal, or like, somebody's doing yoga at 6 o'clock in the morning, and there's this idea of self-care, and it's just so off-putting and incongruent with your normal life. You're waking up at like 8 to get to your desk at 8:30 for a meeting that's, going to be horrible, all those different things. But actually, if we change, I think there's something about changing are kind of thinking about self-care, kind of changing our assumptions about self-care, reframing it for ourselves, and understanding that the interconnectedness between the different parts of our life. So, you know, there's something about that idea of thinking about self-care as a plus minus, you know, this kind of idea. And I think the idea of work-life balance feeds into that. You know, if I do 60% work, then I'll only have 40% for my well-being. And if I do 80%, then, you know, this idea of a plus minus game for your self-care, I think that's really dangerous, because I think it's both and. Like, you need to be well in order to perform. That's like, it's not actually rocket science, it's the genuine truth. And like, I think it takes some people to burn out to really realize that, but actually you really do need to look after yourself. And I think some other ways of kind of reframing and thinking differently about self-care. So that first thing is around integrating well-being into your life. So that might be going out for walks, you know, meeting, like actually just kind of talking to a colleague and saying, do you want to do that meeting in a 30-minute walk? And we're not doing that enough, because I have said that to myself, oh, I should do that more. I should do that, because it creates endorphins. You feel lighter. But integrating well-being into your life in different aspects like that can be really, really helpful. I think also checking in on, you know, kind of this idea, like all or nothing thinking. So you know, if I don't do my yoga every day and eat my smoothies every day, then forget it. I might as well just not do anything. Mm-hmm. Like, I think just taking incremental steps. I remember when I used to be a big runner, and I started running for 10 minutes, then I go to 15, then I go to 20. And like, eventually I was doing half marathons. I never thought I'd be doing a half marathon. And it was just like, I just needed it for my mental health. It was endorphins, you know, that those kind of chemicals that I needed and wanted. And yeah, so I think the incremental kind of checking in on that all or nothing thinking is really helpful. Mm-hmm. And then I suppose the last piece of advice I'd give anybody here is that idea of putting it into your own terms. So like, what is well-being on my own terms? So like, you know, stopping this idea of the perfect person. And it might actually just be muting something on your Twitter because it causes you anxiety. It might be just watching some like brain-numbing reality TV because that's what you enjoy, and it just like gets you out of the work zone. It kind of creates that space between. So I think there's something about kind of like creating your own idea and terms for well-being and your own mental health. I think that can all be really helpful in terms of shifting our mindset so that we can just kind of, it can come about more naturally. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like personally, I suppose a lot of my kind of downtime at the moment or kind of wellness time maybe is spent trying to prepare for birth. And one of the things they say about that is, you know, if you hear someone talking about a negative birth story, like their advice is just stop them and say, you know, I'm just not really I don't want to get into that, you know, and I'm not really willing to listen to it. And, you know, that thing of stopping the Twitter, you know, trying to be aware of what's going to trigger you in advance and trying to build in those buffers. But it's interesting.
I think there's something about asking yourself, like, what's draining me? You know, I think, you know, what's draining me and where do I feel my freest? You know, because when people ask me, like, how do I know what I want? You know, what's good for me? And like, I equate it to where do I feel my freest? Like, I just feel like expression, not even, it doesn't have to be artistic, but like, I feel free when I'm running. Like, I feel really free when I'm running. I'm just like, I'm just going to run forever. I don't care, you know? So I think it's how you feel free and what makes you feel free. That's helpful. That's been helpful for me.
Yeah. And I think maybe, you know, if there's mainly lawyers listening, we're probably like, what is the point of making that list? Because I'll never be able to do it in my life. But maybe there is a benefit of just, in an ideal world, what would you do with your whole day to, as you say, get that feeling, and then, you know, can build it in.
Yeah, and I'm talking freedom, like just 10 minutes of like freedom from thoughts. It's not like, you know, you're free to like live in Mexico for a year or anything like that. And I suppose when you said that, Maeve, I was thinking what's really important for solicitors, younger solicitors, is thinking about that idea of sustainability, because you've worked really hard, you've come through your FE1s, you've gone to Blackhall, you've done your apprenticeship, you're working so hard. You don't want to burn out in 6 years' time or become disillusioned. So it's really important that that kind of, because I could hear you say there, I don't have time for that, or I might have, and that idea, I know that's there in the profession, but actually, if you're playing the long game and if you're being really strategic and intelligent about this, you want to be top of your game, maybe at leadership level when you're in your 50s or 60s, 40s, 50s, 60s. So make sure that happens by looking after yourself now.
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. I see we've got questions coming on in through the chat, or the chat function, which is great. So keep them coming and we'll deal with them all at the end. Maybe we can just, so that we kind of get to the things that we wanted to talk about, and then we see where the questions bring us. But you had mentioned about the pandemic and how that, what we've learned from that, or how what changes is made. Maybe you could talk to us a bit about that.
Yeah, I think it's important, I think, to kind of acknowledge what we've been through in the last year and a half. It has been really traumatic, and I suppose there's been different kind of processes of pain for different people. Some people might have experienced loss, unfortunately, and then others might have actually just experienced just loss in the sense of feeling really lonely, realizing things about their life that they hadn't realized before. I think it was a really important time for kind of self-reflection. We were kind of faced with ourselves every day, and not moving anywhere, not going anywhere, not having those activities that keep us really busy and just kind of distract us from ourselves. And I suppose that the idea of resilience is really important. And I don't like resilience being used as this kind of like, pseudonym for well-being and mental health, because I think that's dangerous. It's a little bit like, placing the onus on just the individual. But I do really think that what's important about resilience is that resilience is a kind of an integration of all our experiences, of all our different pains, of what we've gone through and where we are right now. Maybe a slightly different person, maybe our mindset has changed. And I think I think it's important to acknowledge that everybody here, as a younger solicitor in particular, has gone through a kind of, I'm not going to use the word an unprecedented time in history. That's not, we shouldn't take that lightly. And I think what's happening is people are kind of normalizing the experience now. Oh yeah, whatever, it's just but I think it's important to sit back and kind of go, actually, like, I've become really resilient in the last year and a half. I've adapted to the various different things that have happened. I've ended up calling my boss on really difficult occasions. I've handled tricky matters. I've done meetings online that have been tricky, and I've had to go back into my kitchen with my partner and feel the kind of the aggression from that room into my kitchen. So yeah, I think what comes with resilience is that sense of hope. The idea that, like, there's so much more there now as well, and to explore for people. And yeah, that's really all I kind of wanted to say about resilience.
Yeah, no, that's huge. I think, definitely brushing over the fact that we even got through that, and are still, dealing with the ramifications. So that's huge.
Yeah, and that there was a huge ambiguity there with the experience. There was so much ambiguity there. Like there was so much uncertainty. People had to move out of their accommodation because, it didn't make sense for them to be in their accommodation. They were living with housemates, didn't have space. There was so much uncertainty, so much ambiguity. And yet everybody here got through that. And that, I think that experience of ambiguity will like be really important for all of you in your life, because everybody has experienced ambiguity in their life. And it's not a nice feeling. I want to do this, but I don't want to do this. I kind of feel a bit weird about this, but I also know I have to do it. We have ambiguity every day. I have it in work all the time. Oh no, I've got to send this email, but I know I have to send it, but it's important that I send it, but so yeah, it's just about taking those learnings with it and kind of, yeah.
Definitely. We might take this question now, and again, if anybody else wants to ask anything, please do. So Brendan Hayes, the chairperson of the Younger Members Committee, has said, thanks for your insights, Julie. The Younger Members Committee recent survey, and this is the Future of Work survey, highlighted that feelings of isolation has been a major issue for some younger members during working from home, particularly those in larger firms, and the recent Wellbeing Summit also provided some great insights. Are there additional practical or formal steps which the Law Society and or firms could take to encourage self-care, such as awareness campaigns, profession-wide formal mentoring of juniors?
I think that's a really important point. Awareness campaigns, I would say that there's awareness campaigns happening in the sense of the wider wellbeing and mental health kind of work that we're doing, in particular for isolation, loneliness. We have done some work, and we did some work, and we actually had Dr. Tony Bates come into us during the pandemic. He didn't come into us, but he was on, online. And we had a really interesting conversation with him, and that is recorded and it's up on the Professional Wellbeing Hub. So we were really conscious that isolation was affecting lots of people, and there was a Gazette article about it. So we are, in a sense, trying through our different channels to bring awareness to wellbeing, to specific topics like isolation, loneliness, and there's been like various different topics throughout the year that we've brought attention to. But I think we could do more, in particular for younger solicitors, and I think that's something that also came out of the Dignity Matters report. We're seeing in the IBA Mental Wellbeing report, we're seeing it in the Dignity Matters report, that we need to do more for younger solicitors. And how do we do that? And what would be meaningful for younger solicitors? And I think that would be great to work maybe with the Younger Members Committee at some point, like what would actually be meaningful? Because we can do things, we've brought awareness to different things, but are people hearing about it? What do they want to hear about? Would be really important. And the second part wasn't awareness, it was, what was the second part made?
Formal mentoring, profession-wide. Formal
mentoring, yeah. I know there is the Women in Leadership program that's taking that is there. So that's really important to remember that that's an opportunity, and it's as far as I know, it runs every year. But I think that's a good point. Why don't we have something for younger members specifically around mentoring? Yeah.
Another good question here from Mike Quinlan. Do you have any tips on how to draw the line between work and the temptation to log on after hours and set boundaries at work? I think that's huge.
Yeah, healthy boundaries, so important. I mean, I was going to say, and I didn't get to say it really, was that piece around kind of knowing yourself. And, I suppose it's a bit of a deep answer to this question, but I wonder how we evaluate ourselves. How do you evaluate yourself is a question. Do you depend on kind of other people's opinions to gain your own self-worth? And that's a question that I've had to ask myself over the years. And when I answered it and had an answer that was actually, no, I do value my opinion. I value my opinion more. I was in a better place to be able to kind of go, right, okay, now I'm just, I need to do this for myself. I need to stop, and this is the end of it. This is the end of work. But practical tips, I think going out for a 20-minute walk. So just literally having a time, having even somebody that you need to call, or if you don't have anybody that you're living with, having somebody that you need to call, calling or on the phone or calling over to somebody, having an agenda where you like, I'm going to go to the shop at 6 o'clock to make my dinner for 7 o'clock. So having a really clear deadline for yourself. And I think getting out of your workstation is really, really important. I'm finding it's really difficult more and more that the more we're working from home, it's really, really tricky. Having a space where you put your desk, where you can even like just put it into a box and like close it off. If you're living in a small space, that's really, really important. Yeah, I think that'd be the kind of the practical tips that I'd have for that.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting, that word temptation, it's like, why are we tempted? And I think that's because of the messaging that comes from our seniors, perhaps. There's nobody more senior than Mike, so I don't know who he is the top. But for the rest of us, our seniors and the kind of the places that we work in general, that the messaging isn't coming through, that the people we are going to promote and the people we think are the best lawyers are the ones who achieve this and this. It's not down to the ones that are still at their desk, and I think that's then it's so confusing when those messages aren't clear, and that's why we feel really should go back.
I agree, Maeve. And I think I've had previous bosses who go home, who talk about their children, who talk about the activity races that they're making a priority to go to that evening, to leave work at 5 o'clock. So yeah, I think that's really important for leadership to emulate for their staff. And I think there's something about that idea, and I think it came up earlier around that piece around, if I want to progress, I must be attached to my desk. This idea that we have in our head, it's a narrative that's kind of there all the time. But question that narrative. Is that the truth? Don't you need to get a good night's sleep to be able to perform better? And although you can't see that performance indicator because it's not on your desk or something that's being monitored, know yourself and kind of go, I know I'm feeling better today. I know I'm doing better. I know that I'm having more clarity. I'm having better conversations.
Yeah, and I think that thing about the honesty, hearing people say, I promised my kids we're doing this today, so I'm logging off for the 2 hours and I'll be back on. It is so good, and that we can all, like, we have peers and we probably have trainees that or anybody that's working with us and around us, like, we can be that if rather than wait for others to do
absolutely.
it.
Yeah, and that's a point I'd love to kind of end this on. I'd like to share information on some of the resources that are there through the Professional Wellbeing Hub and the Professional Wellbeing Project. But I think that's a really important point. I think you're the future of the profession, like the survey said. You are the future of this work. You are the future of the profession. So this kind of idea of like it's somebody else's responsibility. It is obviously leadership's responsibility, but you're the next generation of leaders. You are you're leading, you're helping your peers, you're supporting your peers, and I think we can all be part of collective cultural change, and it's important that kind of we all take part in that. And it's amazing. You'd be surprised at when you do something, that other people do start to follow on and to feel more at ease to do things. And I might just kind of get a plug in for some of the Wellbeing Project. Some of the Wellbeing Project supports. So the first one is Legal Mind. I'm hoping that everybody on this call knows about Legal Mind. Legal Mind is a independent, confidential mental health support. It is low cost. It is completely separate to the Law Society. It is run by psychotherapists and counsellors and psychologists. So you call up, you have a conversation with the psychotherapist or a counsellor, and then you can be referred on for deeper support. So you're talking like it's a really, I think it's a really significant support. The Law Society is subsidising it, so it's only €30 per therapeutic session, which is quite a substantial take off the mark that you would be paying for a psychotherapist. And I would encourage you all to use it as a preventative, not to wait until you get to crisis point to use Legal Mind. You can ring up and say, I'm having troubles at work. I'm not feeling great about myself. I'm low in confidence, whatever it is, I'd like to speak to a psychotherapist, and you'll be referred on to a psychotherapist. I suppose the other thing is that the Professional Wellbeing Hub has all of this information on there. So we have CPD events, we have legal ed talks, which is there's a whole Unlocking Wellbeing, Wellness Together, a section which has a number of different speakers on there. So we had like Caroline Foran, who talks about anxiety. Alistair Campbell talks about depression. A huge amount on there, and thanks, May, for putting the link up there. So that's fantastic, and that's free CPD for everybody. And there's also a 1 hour conversation between Blind Boy and Dr. Sharon Lambert on secondary traumatic stress on Legal Ed Talks as well. So there's also then the last thing that I'll kind of plug today is there is the Ask an Expert column. So that is for solicitors, younger solicitors, older solicitors, whatever type size of solicitor there is out there, to write in to the Gazette magazine, asking anonymously, asking about a wellbeing problem that they're facing. And we seek out independent experts to then answer those wellbeing problems. So it's kind of like a problem page for anybody in the profession. If you don't have colleagues to talk to, or if it's something that you don't actually just want to talk to colleagues about, you can send in a quick, it's completely confidential. When I'm the person behind that email address, I promise I do not send or share or anything with those. I literally copy and paste and send it on to the expert without anybody's email address, and then delete that email. So that's a really good opportunity for people to kind of share their problems, and maybe for other people to go for it to resonate with them. Oh, yeah, that person's having the same problems I'm having. Thank God, so it's a really nice way for peer support as well. So yeah, it's all up in the Professional Wellbeing Hub, and Legal Mind is www.lawsociety.ie/legalmind. So really easy to remember.
Great. Yeah. And I think I heard it was for your dependents as well.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. For dependents as well. So that's another thing. I mean, if you've got, a husband, a dependent over the age of 16 who needs to avail of it, they can also, husband, wife, whatever it is. So yeah, they can have a conversation with somebody on the other end of the phone. It's any time of the day or night as well. And it's a free phone number. So some people just call it because they want to have a chat, and they don't need to be referred onwards. They're talking to a counsellor, a psychotherapist about their issues. So that's enough sometimes. And Legal Mind also has a portal with lots of it has videos on there, nutrition information, videos about sleep. We didn't get to the neuroscience piece today, Maeve, but it has actually a lot of that information up there on the Legal Mind portal that you can find out about on the hub as well. Yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah, I hope people do log on and find more information there. Yeah, unfortunately, we do have to finish now. I knew we'd run out of time. I know.
We always think that we can get everything in.
Yeah. But thanks so much to everyone for joining us. Thank you to Julie for that. It's really great, informative, and engaging discussion. And hopefully that's triggered something for you, and maybe just been the prompt to say, I'm going to assess myself, see how I can be more, take more self-care and be more kind of gentle on myself as well, and not be trying to achieve that Instagram life. So best of luck, everybody. And I think that's the final in the younger members autumn series. And thank you all for all of the sessions. You can find the recordings on YouTube, and we'll be in touch.